They want you to break, not literally, not in the dramatic, catastrophic sense of the word, but in the specific, targeted way of someone who has studied you long enough to know exactly where the pressure points are, who understands because they've been paying close attention that beneath the composure, beneath the patience, beneath the extraordinary Virgo capacity to absorb and process and continue functioning, there's something that can be reached, something that responds, and they've decided, for reasons I want to describe carefully, that provoking that response is the thing they need right now, not because they hate you. That's the part that might be hardest to understand. That's the part that doesn't fit the simple narrative of someone who dislikes you trying to upset you. This is more complicated than that, more entangled, more in the specific register of someone who wants something from you that they don't know how to ask for directly. And so they're trying to extract it through behavior designed to produce a reaction that tells them what they want to know. Let me describe what this actually looks like from the outside, because I think you've been experiencing it and possibly misreading parts of it, possibly attributing certain behaviors to things they're not, possibly giving the benefit of the doubt to actions that don't deserve it, or possibly, and this is more Virgo seeing it clearly but not yet having named it plainly enough to act on. There are moments that don't quite add up. That's the first thing. Interactions that have a slightly wrong quality, not obviously wrong, subtle enough to generate doubt rather than certainty. Something said that lands with more edge than the words themselves contain. Something withheld at a moment when something should have been offered. A response that's a beat too slow or a beat too fast. A quality of attention that flickers present and then not, warm and then cooled in a way that doesn't track with the surface of what's happening. And after these moments, you do something very specific. You go quiet inside, not visibly. Virgo never goes visibly quiet in a way that others can read easily, but internally, in the space behind the composed exterior, something engages. Some part of your extraordinarily precise perception locks on to what just happened and begins running it, examining it, looking for the explanation that makes it make sense. And that engagement, that internal turning over of what just occurred, that's exactly what they're after. Hold on, because I want to name the game specifically, without drama, without the kind of sensationalism that turns something genuinely uncomfortable into something entertaining. What they're doing is information extraction. And I want to describe how that works, because I think understanding the mechanism makes you significantly harder to play. They don't know where they stand with you. That's the root of everything. That's the anxiety driving the behavior. They can't read you the way they can read other people. Can't determine from your normal presentation what you actually feel, what you actually think of them, what they actually mean to you, because you don't leak, because your composure is genuine rather than performed, because the version of you that faces the world is consistent enough that it doesn't offer the gaps and inconsistencies that people usually read to understand someone's interior state. You're opaque in a way they find genuinely destabilizing. And opacity to someone who needs to know where they stand feels like a threat. So they've found a workaround. If they can't read you in your natural state, if your natural state doesn't give them the information they need, they'll create an unnatural state. They'll introduce something that disrupts the composure, that creates a crack in the consistency, that produces a response from you that is less managed than usual and therefore more legible. The provocation is a reading strategy. They're trying to learn you through your reactions There's an image I keep seeing. Someone pressing on different points of a surface, methodically, patiently, with the specific, focused attention of someone looking for the place where the surface gives, where pressure produces yield, where the thing that appears solid reveals itself to have a point of entry. And they've been doing this long enough and have found some things, not everything, not the deep things, not the interior things you keep most carefully, but surface things, specific responses you have to specific stimuli that you maybe didn't realize were visible. Small reactions that tell a story you didn't intend to tell. And they've been reading that story and adjusting their approach accordingly. The more I sit with this, the more I keep finding something I want to name carefully. This person is not confident. I want to say that clearly because the game playing, the provocation, the deliberate introduction of friction, all of that reads like power, like someone operating from a position of control and calculation and superiority. It isn't. It's the opposite. It's the specific behavior of someone who feels significantly less certain than they appear, who is using strategy because genuine vulnerability feels unavailable to them, who is trying to create controlled situations because uncontrolled ones, situations where they actually put something real on the table and wait to see how it's received, feel too dangerous. The game is a fear response dressed as control. And here's what I want you to understand about that. Genuinely confident people don't need to provoke reactions to get information. They ask, they communicate, they say the actual thing they want to know. They tolerate the discomfort of genuine exchange because they have enough security in themselves to survive a response they didn't want. This person doesn't have that security. Not with you. Maybe not with anyone right now. And their insecurity, their specific, particular driving this whole dynamic insecurity is actually the most important thing to understand about what's happening. Wait. Because there's something else here that I wasn't expecting to find, and I want to try to describe it. They're trying to make you chase underneath the provocation, underneath the information extraction, underneath all the surface behavior that we've been describing. There's that, the specific hope, possibly not even fully conscious, that if they can get you reactive enough, unsettled enough, off balance enough, you'll reach. You'll close the distance. You'll do something that demonstrates that they matter to you enough to produce a response. That the reaction they provoke will look like caring. And there's something almost unbearably human about that. Because what they actually want is care. Is to know they matter to you, is to have confirmation of their own significance in your world. And they could ask for that. Could simply be vulnerable and honest and direct and ask. But asking requires a kind of openness they don't currently have access to. So they're engineering the answer instead. Through behavior designed to produce in you the involuntary communication of what they need to know. It's convoluted, it's costly, it's the long, exhausting, emotionally expensive way around a conversation that could happen in 5 honest minutes. And it's working only partially, which is its own kind of tragedy. I want to describe something specific about the particular provocations because they're not random. That's what I keep finding. Each one has been calibrated. Some of them are designed to trigger your insecurity. The specific targeted introduction of information or behavior that touches the places where you're less certain, where your confidence has gaps, where your self-knowledge includes the acknowledgement of vulnerability, These provocations are delivered casually, so casually that the calculated quality of them is deniable. So you're left holding the reaction without being able to point clearly to the cause. Some of them are designed to trigger your jealousy. References to other people, deliberately placed with the specific quality of something mentioned and then moved past, not dwelt on, not elaborated, just introduced and released like a stone dropped into still water, left to produce whatever ripples it produces, and then watched to see what the surface of you does with the disturbance. And some of them are designed to trigger your loyalty, the most sophisticated ones. The provocations that present you with a version of this person that appears to need something, that activates your instinct to show up, your specific Virgo quality of caring for things in your orbit genuinely, practically, without requiring acknowledgement, being used as a lever. All of it designed, all of it aimed. There's something I want to say about how you've been responding, because I think you need to hear this without the usual softening. You've been giving them what they want. Not completely, not in the obvious ways, but in the small, barely visible ways, the micro reactions that you think are invisible but aren't, the slight shift in your quality of attention after certain provocations, the specific way your energy changes when certain things are introduced, the moments where your composure costs you something and the cost shows just slightly, just enough to someone who is watching for exactly that, and they've been watching for exactly that. I'm not saying this to criticize you. I'm saying it because I think you need to understand what's been happening in order to decide whether to continue letting it happen. Because right now, the game is providing this person with information they haven't earned through honest communication, is rewarding behavior that doesn't deserve reward, is reinforcing the lesson that manipulation is an effective strategy with you specifically. And you are too intelligent and too self-possessed to be a case study in someone else's manipulation strategy. There's something about what's underneath your reactions that I want to name. Because here's the thing that this situation reveals uncomfortably but usefully about where you are. You care more than you've let yourself fully acknowledge, more than your composed exterior communicates, more than you've probably admitted even internally, because admitting it feels like vulnerability, and vulnerability in this specific context has felt dangerous. The provocations are finding purchase because there's something there to find, some investment, some feeling, some attachment to an outcome that makes the deliberate disruption of that outcome actually disruptive rather than easily dismissed. And that caring is not the problem. The caring is the most honest thing in this whole dynamic. It's what's being used against you that's the problem. The caring itself, the fact that you feel something real about this person or this situation, that's not something to be ashamed of or to harden yourself against. It's information about what you actually want, and what you actually want deserves better than this. I want to talk about the reaction they haven't been able to provoke, because they've gotten some reactions, small ones. The carefully harvested micro responses we've been describing, but the reaction they actually want, the one the whole strategy is building toward, they haven't gotten that. The open one, the fully exposed, completely unmanaged, this is what I actually feel and I'm not filtering it reaction. They haven't gotten that because you haven't given it. Not because you're dishonest, because your instincts, the specific, finely calibrated instincts of someone who has learned to be careful with their most vulnerable things, have been protecting you from giving it to someone who hasn't demonstrated they deserve it. and those instincts are correct. Whatever you feel about this person, however real it is, however significant, it doesn't belong in the hands of someone who has been trying to extract it through manipulation rather than earn it through honesty. Your real reaction is yours. Until someone earns the right to receive it through behavior that actually warrants it, there's a shift coming in this dynamic, and I want to try to describe it. Because what I keep getting is that this can't continue at the current level indefinitely. Something has to give. Either the game escalates, becomes more obvious, more aggressive, more difficult to misread, and produces a confrontation that forces both of you into honesty, whether you planned for it or not, or something in this person shifts. The strategy fails sufficiently, produces the wrong result one too many times, costs more than it gains, and the calculation changes. The risk of genuine vulnerability starts to look preferable to the exhaustion of continued manipulation, or you name it. You decide from your own ground, on your own timeline, for your own reasons, to stop pretending you don't see what's happening and to say something true about it, not dramatically, not as accusation, as the specific, clear, completely unrattled naming of what you've observed. I see what you're doing. I'm not going to keep reacting to it. If you want to know something about me, ask me. I want to say something about what naming it actually looks like, because I think Virgo sometimes imagines that addressing something directly requires more emotional energy than it actually does, more drama than it actually requires. It doesn't have to be a confrontation. It can be as simple as a shift in your response pattern. A quiet, consistent, not reactifying to the provocations shift that communicates through behavior rather than through words, that the strategy has been seen and is no longer operational. Because here's what happens when you stop reacting. The game loses its feedback loop. Provocation requires response to function. Remove the response consistently enough, and the provocation has nowhere to go, has no data to collect, has no purpose that justifies its ongoing cost. And the person playing the game has to decide what to do next without the game, and what they do next in the absence of the strategy, in the sudden requirement of a different approach that's going to tell you everything you need to know about whether there's anything real underneath the behavior. Some people, when the game stops working, find a different game, and some people find honesty. There's something about what you deserve from this person that I want to name before we close. Not what they're capable of right now. What you deserve. You deserve directness. The specific, clean, I want something and I'm going to say so instead of engineering it directness. That is the baseline requirement for any dynamic you give your genuine energy to. The willingness to be actually vulnerable rather than strategically vulnerable. The courage to ask for what they need rather than trying to trick it out of you. You deserve someone who looks at their own behavior and finds it insufficient, who sits with what they've been doing and feels the genuine discomfort of recognizing themselves in it, who doesn't continue when the continuation requires becoming a version of themselves they can't respect. Whether this person is capable of that, whether they have the self-awareness and the courage to stop the game and show up differently, that's the question this period is answering. And you don't have to wait anxiously for the answer. You can simply stop making the game so easy to play. Withdraw the reactions. Stand in your own ground. And let what's real rise to the surface when the strategy runs out of fuel. Real things rise. Games eventually exhaust themselves. And what's left when the exhaustion hits is where this actually goes. The last thing You are not someone who can be broken by provocation. Not because you don't feel things. You feel things profoundly. Not because you don't react. You react internally, richly, with the full weight of your perception and sensitivity and depth. But broken, no, because beneath all of it, beneath the composure and the patience and the ongoing management of a dynamic that would have produced visible cracks in most people by now, there's something that the provocation hasn't reached, something they haven't managed to find the pressure point for. Your center, the specific, grounded, entirely yours place inside you that knows what you're worth and what you deserve and what you're willing to accept. They've been pressing on the surface that's still intact. And it's going to remain intact regardless of how creative the game gets. Because some things aren't reachable through strategy. Some things only open for honesty. And until honesty arrives, your center stays yours, completely and entirely yours.